How I Came to Like the Woman in the Picture. Part 4. New York City. In 2005, I was living in, no, not New York City, but Connecticut, with my parents. Living with my parents, however, afforded me the opportunity to work full-time. Granted, I would struggle, being sick and all. Anyhow, I worked, and was able to hold on to a job for at least a little while. Bottom line, I was able to save up some money. Of course, there would come a time, I knew, when I would have to move out of my parents' house, and finally that time came when I was let go from my job. I knew afterward that living on my own, I could not stay in Connecticut. Apartments in Connecticut are expensive. I would have therefore to move. Where to? Two destinations competed for my consideration. One, which was my own consideration, and the other, God's apparent idea, which I did not at all understand, and tried not to think about too much. My consideration was that I go to Paris, France, and write a book. Over time, I would, however, realize that this idea was every bit impractical, and for like a million reasons. What I, on the other hand, believed to be God's idea was that I relocate to New York City. This New York City leading was something which the Holy Spirit, in fact, had been impressing upon me for the 3 or 4 years leading up to this time, and to the point even where I would at times tell people, point blank, you know what, I think one day I'm going to live in New York City. Myself, I had zero interest in living in New York City. For one thing, the place is expensive. And for another, I have a nerve disorder, see, and so I otherwise prefer to live in quiet, peaceable type places very unlike Manhattan. Anyhow, it was at length, running out of options, that I began to take this NYC consideration seriously. I soon afterward went online to research apartments in Manhattan and in the surrounding boroughs. Alas, all the apartments I found were extremely expensive. Also, I discovered that for every job in New York City, there are like 3 or 4 people who will step on toes to get it. New York City did not look like it was going to work out. Circumstances were not opening up for me, and neither was the Holy Spirit impressing upon me anything specific. But I thought you wanted me to move to New York City, I prayed. Maybe God meant New York State. Albany, Rochester, Binghamton. I afterward researched these cities as well. Again, kind of expensive, and very little work. Until finally I found out about Buffalo. This city in upstate New York had any number of inexpensive apartments, I noticed. However, this seemed to be the case only because the economy of the city was like one of the worst in the country. Anyhow, I was able to locate an apartment in the area which I thought might work, and in January 2006, I so then decided to drive out to Buffalo to go take a look. On the drive up, I got caught in a terrible snowstorm. In Ullman, I thought about turning back. I decided to press on. Upon my arrival in Buffalo, the apartments which I planned to look at were actually in the nearby town of Niagara Falls, and yes, there is actually a town right by the falls. Upon my arriving in Buffalo, I sensed right away the wrongness of the situation. It was like I was forcing something, and meanwhile God was silent on the matter. On the drive back home to Connecticut, I asked God to let me know whether or not He wanted me to move to Buffalo. I did not myself especially like Buffalo, yet I was willing to do whatever God wanted me to do. I prayed, Lord, you have been speaking to me for some time about this New York City leading. Right now, as you know, I cannot afford to live in New York City. However, to help accommodate what I believe to be your will, I am willing anyhow to relocate to the closest thing to New York City, which for the moment would appear to be Buffalo. If, however, Lord, I prayed, it is not your will for me to move to New York State at this time, then please, give me a warning. This prayer I made while driving on State Route 9, about 50 miles due south of Albany, around 11 p.m. Now, literal moments after making this prayer, I noticed flashing lights in my rearview mirror. I was being pulled over. The officer asked me if I had been drinking. I told him no. He asked why it was then I had been driving in the middle of the road. I told him that I had lots of things on my mind, that we were in the middle of nowhere and I hadn't seen any other car in this double-lane highway for like an hour, and so I guess I hadn't been paying much attention. The officer said, "I'm going to give you a warning." After that, New York was officially off my short list of places to relocate to. I decided instead to settle in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But now don't get me wrong, for this New York City leading would never fully leave me. I remember, for example, one morning eating my breakfast in my Tulsa apartment and thinking, Tulsa is the way to New York City. In order to get there, I first need to be here.